stuck in their job. They feel stuck in a bad relationship. They feel stuck looking for a career. If someone feels stuck, what do they need to understand about the brain in order to start the process to get unstuck?
Yeah. So I think that feeling of being stuck, it's really quite natural when you think about neuroscience and your biology. The brain loves to keep you in what is safe and normal to you. The brain is also, I like to call it a prediction machine. So we don't necessarily experience reality. We experience, our brain sort of filtering everything we see, hear, feel, touch, but also predicting what's about to happen. And that's why a lot of times, we feel like anxious or whatever it is. It has to do with the brain's predicting kind of something that's upcoming. Let's say you have a goal and you're like starting a podcast and you're like, okay, I want to do it. And then you're procrastinating it, right? So I always say that there are 3 reasons why people procrastinate. And the first reason is there's an identity sort of mismatch. Your sense of self and who you believe that you are doesn't match with you working toward the goal of launching a podcast. And the default mode network in the brain is really what's at play here. So the default mode network is really appropriately named because it kind of helps to regulate and propel our default mode of behavior, right? So it's responsible for our default mode of being and doing, but it's also responsible for our sense of self and constructing the narrative or the story of our lives. And so if your sense of self doesn't match, if your identity doesn't match whatever it is that you're trying to do, then your default mode network is not really going to be helping you do the behaviors or take the action toward starting a podcast. And so I always tell my clients, I tell my students, I tell everyone on social media, I'm like, just identity shift, shift your identity. You can just start to identify as the version of you who has done the thing.
Are you saying that if you don't, I know you've said something which I love. You said science says you have to act like you already have it before something can happen.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you're saying? That you've got to feel like I'm already an author, I'm already a podcaster? How does someone practically apply that identity to make sure it's aligned?
Right. So it's really just choosing to identify as that person, right? And so when I say that, you have to act like you already have it or you already are it in order to do it or be it. It works the same way. The analogy I use there is falling asleep at night. Like when you fall asleep at night, you lay down, you close your eyes, you slow your breath, and you pretend like you're asleep until you fall asleep and your brain makes it so. And life works that way as well. And you have to act like it and move like it, right? I think a lot of times we don't realize the power that we have to choose those sorts of things. And this is another reason why I tell people to be so careful about the labels that they use to identify themselves and the labels that they put on themselves. And what happens then is that you're writing a new story and your brain kind of stops using your past to predict your future. And it kind of starts to take the present moment and your new identity that you are choosing to help predict your future behavior. And so it's super powerful.
I love that. All right. What's the second? That was great.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the second reason why most people procrastinate is fear. A lot of times we are actually subconsciously afraid of success. And I think this is a big reason why a lot of people stay stuck is that we are actually subconsciously afraid of what it might look like if we succeed at doing it. This is another reason why I tell people all the time, like a lot of people say, get specific about your goals, but I also say, get specific about your fears because your fears, they can have control over you when you don't know what they are. But when you identify them, labeling them, well, that activates the prefrontal cortex, and the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala, they sort of have this kind of seesaw relationship where when one activity in one goes up, activity in the other goes down. And so when you label your emotions, you label the fears that you have, you're actually giving yourself your power back. You're activating the prefrontal cortex, which is the CEO of your brain. It's sort of the boss of your brain. I have this saying called take it all the way to the end. And so allow yourself to go on the journey or the path all the way to the end. My goal is to have a top podcast in the world, right? So if I'm having a top podcast in the world, what might that look like? Oh, that means that I'm setting myself up to be seen more and maybe have more hate and maybe have more criticism and judgment and all that. And just seeing myself write that down, I was like, okay, well, if my brain is highlighting that as, oh, if you go and start a podcast, you're going to have more hate and face more criticism, then it might try to keep me safe from that. And that's really what that is your brain is just trying to keep you safe. And so when you get clear on that, then you can rewrite the story of exactly like you said, yes, it's true, being more vulnerable and being seen might equal more judgment or criticism, but it might also equal and to the same extent, if not more love and more support. But it's super important to recognize and acknowledge that any sort of growth happens outside of our comfort zones. Like I would not be in the position where I am today if I didn't take delusional level risks and leaps of faith. And so it's really a requirement to achieving or receiving or having whatever it is that we want.
Yeah. What's number 3?
Okay. So there's an identity mismatch, or there's maybe some underlying fear behind it. And then number 3 is really more of a scientific kind of simple, straightforward thing. And it's cheap dopamine. Social media, it's all over the place. And like fast food, binging, Netflix, whatever it is. When it comes to cheap dopamine, if you're giving yourself a lot of that, then you're not really, and one of the big things that I do to help kind of motivate myself to doing things is withholding reward. And so whenever I was in the PhD, I studied drug addiction. And so a lot of dopamine research and studying kind of the dopamine pathways, but also drug addiction is really just maladaptive habit formation. And so when I think about kind of cheap dopamine and habit formation and behavior, because dopamine drives a lot of behavior, one of the things that I do to kind of motivate myself is just withhold whatever reward that I'm wanting. So let's say I saw it online or I was shopping or whatever and I saw a shirt that I wanted. I wouldn't allow myself to buy it, or a candle or whatever it is. I wouldn't allow myself to buy it until after I do the task that I'm maybe procrastinating or feeling stuck doing. And so if someone's out there right now and you're procrastinating or feeling stuck, starting a business or going after a job or dating in a relationship or whatever it is, and you're regularly giving yourself sort of cheap dopamine, or, allowing yourself to just like have whatever reward it is and you just give it to yourself all the time, then you're not really setting yourself up for success, because you're giving yourself, your brain is just it's well fed on dopamine. And you can think of it sort of as the analogy of like snacking all day, right? So if you're snacking all day, you're never really going to be hungry and to eat that whole meal. And so dopamine's kind of the same way. If you're like giving yourself those cheap dopamine hits, going on social media all day long, then you're never really going to be driven to go complete that big task. And that big task is going to be a lot more rewarding than the small, repetitive, cheap dopamine, especially at night. So I want to highlight that, because I realized, I was waking up with less motivation, waking up low on energy, and just not really feeling like normally. And I have most of the time, I really do wake up and I jump out of bed and I'm like ready and so excited for the day. So I'm like, what's happening here? And what I actually realized was that dopamine actually resets itself and restores as you sleep. And so scrolling at nighttime or binge watching Netflix or any of those things that give you cheap dopamine, and even eating late night snacks and all that, that actually, well, one, it disrupts your sleep and that keeps your dopamine system from restoring itself. But also it desensitizes your dopamine receptors. So when you wake up in the morning, you're, for lack of a better, like keep it simple, you're less sensitive to dopamine when you wake up in the morning, when you give yourself cheap dopamine at night. And so cheap dopamine is number 3. It's a big reason why people stay stuck. Yeah, because if you're giving yourself snacks all day, you're never going to be driven to cook a meal. If you're giving yourself cheap dopamine all day long, you're never going to be driven to go do the big task that's going to help you get closer to your dreams.
I think you're spot on that there are a million distractions today. It's easy to be caught down a wormhole. It's easy to binge a show. And you don't realize that actually building the thing you love, or starting that business, or investing in that relationship, whatever it is, will be so much more meaningful. What do we do with that? How do we get there?
Yeah. So I think 2 things. The first is get super specific about why you want that thing, right? Because motivation is not always going to be there for you. And that's where knowing your why. And I kind of have a different take on discipline, where I don't really think of like this hardcore sort of discipline sort of moment. I think of discipline as looking out for future you. Who do you want to be? Like when you imagine yourself like achieving the goals or whatever it is, like it's not really about that. It's about who achieving those goals is going to make you become. So understanding your why and why you want to do it. Why do you want to write the book? And that will keep you going and motivate you. And then another thing that I talk about a lot in my community and in the people that I coach is that take a moment after you do accomplish those things. And it can be just as simple as taking a moment to tell yourself, hey, I'm proud of you. Good job. You accomplished that. Self-talk boosts dopamine. Like self-affirmation boosts dopamine. it activates the reward centers in the brain. Speaking to yourself positively and kindly, it's so, so, so important. And making sure to take a moment to do that and acknowledge yourself when you are working toward the goals. It's really easy to do that and get caught up in the big picture and not give yourself the pat on the back for the steps that you're taking along the way. And those are the little dopamine boosts that are going to build momentum, that are going to keep you going, and that are also going to teach your brain that, oh, hey, this behavior, this action that we're taking is valuable and meaningful.
You've said that desperately wanting something actually blocks you from getting it.
Mm-hmm.
Why does desperately wanting something actually block it?
When you are very attached to an outcome and you desperately want something, and it's to the point where it is kind of raising your stress levels and you are dependent on it or attached to the outcome, it boosts stress and it boosts cortisol. And that actually narrows your perception and which gives you a sort of tunnel vision and actually blocks you from being able to perceive or be aware of alternate pathways. And also, whenever we are chronically stressed, that puts us in fight or flight. And when the nervous system's dysregulated, it becomes way harder to rewire your brain. And then there's another piece of it, which is sort of this incubation effect in the brain. And I'm sure you've noticed that if you're sitting there and you're thinking about a problem or a challenge, or you're wanting an answer to something and you can't necessarily think of the answer. But then as soon as you walk away from it and you go for a walk or you're in the shower or whatever it is, all of a sudden the answer comes and whatever you wanted to say comes. That's the incubation effect. And our subconscious mind, or like the other kind of areas in the brain, can process a lot more information and make a lot more connections than our conscious mind can when we're sort of focusing on something. That doesn't mean that you're not going to be focused on your goals, but it means that, you work toward it and you worry about the inputs and you worry about what you can do, but you sort of let go of the how and the when, and it also allows you to enjoy the journey, which is really important. And I think that's, if not one of the most important things when it comes to all of it, is enjoying the journey.
One thing I always say to people is you'll get to where you want in life, just not in the way you imagine it. The idea that you're going in the direction, but the path it's going to take is going to be totally different.
Yeah.
What's your take on manifestation?
I 100,000% believe in manifestation. There's a study done in the 1970s where they took kittens. They're raised mostly in complete darkness, except for a few hours a day where they're shown only horizontal black and white lines. And then a different group was shown only vertical black and white lines. They allowed their brains to develop through, their adolescence. And then when their brains were more developed, their visual systems were developed, they put them in a normal environment with chairs and tables and all the things. And what they found was that the kittens that were raised to only see horizontal lines, they couldn't see vertical objects. They would bump into table legs and chair legs because their brains weren't programmed or wired to see them. The brain develops in a way that helps us survive in our environment that we grew up in. And so the kittens that could only see the vertical lines as they were raised, they would weave in and out of table legs and chair legs and all of that, but they wouldn't jump up onto tabletops or, chairs to perch the way that the kittens that were raised to see horizontal lines would. And so I think that, that study kind of really showed me that if the way that kittens were raised kind of determined what they could then see or perceive in their reality, like what am I missing in my life because of the way that my brain is wired and the way that I was programmed by my environment. And I think that's where sort of certain activities like shadow work kind of come in, but recognizing that you really can only see in your reality what your brain is wired for. And so that job, that relationship, that thing that you're trying to manifest or create into your life, it might be right in front of you, but you're missing it because your brain is not programmed to see it or construct it, right? Yeah. And so I do think that, of course, it requires action, but taking aligned action. And I think that it's important to recognize that when you have action, but your brain isn't programmed to see it, then you'll be taking action for a long time. You might achieve it, you might not. But when you're, of course, only doing the brain component or the energetic component of it, the mental component, you might become this great thing, but it's going to take action for you to go. And I think that when you have both your brain is programmed for whatever it is that you want and you're taking action toward what you want, then that's when you become completely unstoppable.
How do we manifest based on neuroscience? How would neuroscience suggest we do that?
Yeah. So I have a 3-step process. I love
them. I love them too. I know you do. I know you're a 3-step.
I love me some steps and making it simple. That goes back to my scientist days. So when it comes to manifesting, it really is the same thing for anything that you want. So the first step is to identify the feelings. Identify the feelings that you believe the thing that you want is going to bring you. I always say you don't want the thing that you want the feeling that you believe the thing that you want is going to bring you. So for example, if you are wanting a relationship, then the feeling you might be after is to be loved and feel safe and supported. If you're wanting a whole bunch of money, it might be freedom. It might be security, again, safety and security and freedom, whatever it is, right? So those are a few examples, but whatever it is that you want, write down whatever it is that you want, and then write down the feelings that you believe those things that you want are going to bring you. It's super important to identify the feelings. And I get a lot of questions from people like, what if I don't know what I want? If you don't know what you want, that's fine. You can still write down the feelings that you want, because I think a lot of times maybe we don't know. And I think a lot of times also we think we know what we want, but we don't really know what we want. But it really is the feeling that we're after. And so identify the feelings. That's the first step. Identify the feelings and write them down. And then from there, make 2 lists. The first list is a list of reasons why you already have to feel that way. And so, for example, for me, I actually held a manifestation workshop in my community, and I was I always use personal examples. So mine was 1 million followers on Instagram, and I didn't have it at the time. And live on that call, I realized, oh, what I'm really after is feeling official and accomplished. Like I want to feel official and accomplished. That's really what I want. And so then I identified those feelings, right? And so then the next step is to write a list of reasons I already have to feel that way. I think a lot of times, again, our brain isn't even letting us acknowledge that we actually can already feel that way in the present. And I was like, I already have this business. I'm coaching people. I'm changing lives. I have a giant following on social media, even if it's not 1 million. I have a lot of reasons to feel official and accomplished already. And writing a list of all those reasons down. And I have people in my community that they print out their resume and put it in their bathroom mirror, like all of the things that they've done, right, to make them feel that way. But write down a list of the reasons why you already have to feel that way.
That's brilliant. I love that.
And then the second list is a list of things, right? So sometimes people will be like, well, I don't have any reason to feel that way. I would argue, try harder. But there is another list, and the list is a list of things that you can give yourself that you are in control over to feel that way. So if I'm trying to feel official and accomplished, what can I do today to make myself feel more accomplished? Well, for me, I always feel accomplished after I complete a workout. I always feel like I know that I'm writing a book. I can go write a few pages of my book. That will help me feel accomplished. And so again, what will help me feel official? I mean, the definition, what does official mean to me? I guess for me, it's just like, oh, I made it. And I guess that for that, I could go and maybe read comments of people like saying like, oh, you really helped me or whatever it is. So what are some activities that you can do to give yourself that feeling? And I think combining the two is important, right? Because again, acknowledging all the reasons why you already have to feel that way, but then also becoming more aware of things that you can do in the moment to make yourself feel that way. And when you start doing that, and after like 2 months after doing that practice on myself, I had 1 million followers on Instagram. And I do believe and know that it shifted my energy, right? Like I'm creating